I've had some people who feel that I'm taking advantage of the system. I'm double dipping. I've heard all those things. And very frankly, I think they understand how the system works.
You are a Pocatello City Councilman as well as a state representative for District 28.
That's correct. I was elected at the election in 2017 to my first term in the council. I'm in my second term on the city council, first term as a state legislator from District 28.
That's definitely what I want to talk to you about. But before we do that, let's go back and let's talk about what did you do for a living prior to running for office?
I had a colorful working career, Rat. I have a degree in broadcast journalism from the University of Kansas William Allen White School of Journalism. I served as a radio newsman in my initial job after I graduated from college. I was a station engineer, chief engineer, newsman, salesman. I did a lot of things at radio stations. Originally in Kansas, started out in Garden City, Kansas, then moved to Hutchinson, Kansas. That company that I was working for bought a station here in Pocatello, and they moved me here to run that station after they acquired it. That lasted about 3 years, and when that ended, I got into the car business and did that for about little over 20 years, and decided to make a change after that length of time and spent some time working with credit unions. I also did a couple of 4 years with KZBQ radio in the interim between other things, and retired in 2017 and decided, I'd always had an interest in local government. That first job that I had in Garden City, Kansas, I was the only news person at the station. We were a 5,000 watt AM and a 25,000 watt FM. And I covered city council, county commission, school boards, junior college boards, all the local things, and kind of got intrigued with local government. When they had a meeting, I sat through every hour of every meeting. When I moved to Hutchinson, Kansas, that station was being managed by a former news director for a television station in Topeka, Kansas, and had a great interest in news. And we were the 8th station in a 3-station market, because the Wichita stations were beating us in numbers. It was terrible. So he put a great emphasis on local news. And one of the things we started doing was carrying all city council meetings live on air, gavel to gavel. And that gave me even a greater interest in local government and what they do and how they affect people. So I've always had kind of an interest because of that experience in local government, and have followed local politics somewhat, been involved with the local party here. And when I heard that Gary Moore, who was a city councilman in seat 6 back in those days, had decided he'd had enough time, he was not going to run again, I decided to run for election. So I retired in March that year, spent a couple of months out of town with my mother after Dad had died, and then came back and ran and was successful in an election that fall for seat 6 on the Pocatello City Council.
What was your main motivation for wanting to run?
Just wanting to be involved in what was happening in this community. Pocatello's been good to me. I've lived here 45 years. This town's been good to me. Eastern Idaho overall has been good to me, and I wanted to give something back to the community and have a hand in the development and the things that are going on. We're going to grow. Idaho's been discovered even 6 years ago. We were seeing those trends, and I wanted to have a hand in that, because we can't stop that development or that growth, but by careful planning and working in the future, and a long way in the future, looking ahead, we can make a difference in how that affects future generations. One of the meetings I was at this morning, we talked about the fact that, one of the problems many communities in Idaho have are their streets. They aren't wide enough. They were great for horses when they were laid out 100 years ago. But when you start talking about bicycle paths on the side of them and making them more walkable, there isn't room to do that. We don't have sufficient easements. So I'm hoping that in the future, as Pocatello develops, we can plan for what's going to happen, things that we can't even predict at this point, but let's give ourselves the room to have the right kind of development.
So you complete a term on the city council.
Hmm.
In 2021, you run simultaneously to be on the state, to be a state representative. Why did you do that? Why did you decide to have dual roles?
Well, it wasn't simultaneous. I had no intention. Well, I had talked about the legislature prior to being reelected to my second term, but really didn't want to run against an incumbent conservative. So I ran for city council and was elected. And then Randy Armstrong, who was the representative for this area, decided not to run again. After redistricting and Randy deciding not to run, it left vacant seat in District 28, which is the district that I live in, by one block after redistricting. So I looked at that and looked at what's happening in the state legislature, what I consider radical movements that are going on both the left and right, and felt that I'm a moderate conservative. I'm not an extremist. And I don't mind working with left wing people if they have a good idea. And I think that's the future of where we need to be. I think we're seeing it at the federal level right now. We're seeing the extremists causing problems with what's going on, and we're seeing it in Idaho. And I feel like I can help to be a moderating influence. The class of legislators that I was elected to is the largest since Idaho was formed in 1890. There were 31 new members of the House of Representatives, and it is the largest new group of freshmen that's ever existed. And we kind of all believe the same thing, that there are moderate ways to do things, to compromise and make great strides in what's needed in Idaho. And that was a lot of what made me decide to jump in.
Was there a specific issue in Pocatello that made you think this is an issue that needs to be addressed on the state level?
Not a specific issue, but kind of an attitude. There seems to be an attitude by a lot of the folks in Boise who serve in the legislature, both House and Senate, that they know how to run local cities and counties and fire districts and water districts and all the other local jurisdictions better than the local people do. And I disagree with that. I think local government should be handling local issues. And that wasn't always the case. There's been a tendency to say, we can do it better, we're smarter, we know more in Boise about what's going on in Pocatello or Incumbent or McCammon or Blackfoot or Idaho Falls or wherever it might be. We know better than the local people do. And I disagree with that.
When you filed to run as the state level while also serving as a city councilman, did you get some pushback on that? Did people say, is that a conflict of interest? You can't do that. Did you get some of that mentality?
I've had some sense. My election was very close. I won, I serve in District 28, which is all of Power County and all of Franklin County and the doughnut in Bannock County. District 29 is most of the city of Pocatello proper, but 28 goes around the edges. And I only won the election in those three counties by 402 votes. It was not an overwhelming. I won about 100 in Franklin County, about 100 in Bannock County, and about 200 in Power County. And I didn't hear much about that at the time, but I have since. I've had some people who feel that I'm taking advantage of the system, I'm double dipping. I've heard all those things. And very frankly, I think they understand how the system works. Sure, I'm drawing a small salary from the city of Pocatello and a salary from the state of Idaho in serving in both those positions. And I have health insurance through the state. I transferred there after being elected to the legislature. But the issues that we're talking about are many times not even closely related. In Pocatello, in city government, we're talking about dealing with how your water is delivered and what you pay for it, what your sewer rates are, how the streets are going to look, how many policemen, how many firemen, the local things that affect your life every day right here. Where at the state level, we're talking about bigger issues. things that affect the entire state, what the parks and recreation system is going to look like, how it's going to be maintained, how Fish and Game is going to do their job, what health and welfare looks like, what Medicaid and Medicaid expansion mean to the state. So they're very different issues, but the experience across both seats has been very instructive and given me in many of the things we address at the state level, has given me an advantage. There are at least one other member of a city council in the state of Idaho right now who serves in the legislature. That's Chris Allgood. He's a former police chief in Caldwell, and he is also in the legislature. He has chosen this next session not to run again. He will serve in 24, but he's not going to run next spring for re-election. He's going to concentrate on his city council seat, and it takes a lot to do both jobs. I'll be very frank. In the legislature, while I'm over there January through March, the way it worked this last session, when it came city council days, I would spend usually Tuesday night and Wednesday night prepping the materials, set up in my office in the Capitol, and Zoom into those meetings. So I was present. I wasn't physically present, but there I was on a TV monitor on my position on the dais. And I was listening to the conversations, listening to the comments, and participating in those meetings. The only thing I wasn't able to do was attend work sessions. So I missed 3 work sessions, one in January, February, and March, because those happen at 9 o'clock in the morning at City Hall here in Pocatello. And in Boise, I was in committee meetings at 9 o'clock in the morning, revenue and taxation. But the issues that I was able to carry from the state back to the city and give some insight, and vice versa. When a local jurisdiction issue came up in Boise, I was able to talk as somebody who has some experience with those issues in Bannock County, in the city of Pocatello. And that's something not many people over there can say. They want to issue edicts and pass laws that affect without really knowing how it's going to affect. One good example, there was a bill that was proposed this past session by a representative that would have allowed a ballot in November of every year on the budget that a local jurisdiction passed back in September. That's already been sent to the county for distribution of levies. It's been sent to the state. It's all set up and ready to go. And now they wanted an opportunity to change that. And it simply wouldn't work. They're much more than just that issue that would have to be resolved. You'd have to go back and restart the entire budget process all over again in every jurisdiction that was voted on and changed. So it's been advantageous to have the experience in both directions.
I'm glad you brought up that there's another legislator who also has dual public offices. It's definitely happened before.
Oh, yes.
I know that we got a question a month or two ago. Someone called us and pointed you out and said, you have someone on the city council in Pocatello who also serves as a state legislator. And according to them, there's a state law that prohibits that, but that's not the case.
No, it's not. I think it's been happening for a long time. I know of another former city council person who also served in the legislature probably 20 years ago. And that was Roger Chase, who is a former mayor of Pocatello. When he served, he was filling both roles, and the city of Pocatello, in those days, we had a direct flight to Boise out of Pocatello. The city was flying him back and forth for meetings. But it is not unprecedented. It has happened, and I'm sure it's happened in other communities across the state before that. In the legislature, there are a number of people who have served as former city council people, former police chiefs, former county commissioners, but not many of them have done it simultaneously because it is a lot of work. And if you're young enough, you've got a full-time job, doing both of these jobs would be impossible. It would absolutely be impossible. It's difficult for a lot of folks who own a business or have an employer who are putting in a 40-hour work week and then serving in the legislature. At least I don't have that. I can go to the legislature and concentrate on that full-time job, usually from 7:30 in the morning until 8:30 at night. It's very long days. Most of the time I try to be at the State House by 7:30 in the morning, which means leaving where I'm living about between 7 and 7:15. I've got about a 25 minute drive depending on traffic. And, the committee meetings start at 9. The House floor session starts at 11. Afternoon committee meetings start at 1:30, and you never know when those are going to be finished. And then there are usually meeting with constituents, meeting with legislative advisors, which is the new word for lobbyists. And then usually there's some kind of an evening reception. At least it was during this last session. And I don't know if those will be as prevalent this next session because there was such a huge class of new people this last year. There was a real serious effort by the lobbyists to get to know us all. Now that they know us, I don't know whether we'll have as many of those evening meetings, but most of the time I didn't get home until 8 or 8:30 at night. So it made for a very long workday.
So are you planning to continue in both of those positions in the future?
Well, my council term is up in 2 years, and I haven't made a final decision whether I'm going to run for a third term or not. I'm not ready to announce that. I just am uncertain. I am going to run for another session in the legislature. I think this first session I learned an incredible amount. I'm serving on some committees that frankly I didn't know a lot about at the state level, and I've learned a lot. And I think now it's time to apply that. And give me 2 more years and I'll have some serious experience and a better way to judge bills and what's happening over there. So I'd like to serve one more session in the legislature. City council, I don't know. I'm currently serving as president, and that is a tradition in the Pocatello City Council that we reelect a new president of the council every 2 years after the election cycle. And it is tradition that the person with the most experience, the most tenure on the council, who has not served as council president before, is elected to that position. So my term as president of the council will end this year, and I will still have 2 more years to go on my current term. I don't know whether I will continue that or not. I guess it kind of depends to me on how I feel like things are going within the city and whether we've got the right people in place, and I would feel comfortable stepping away and letting someone else take that position.